On October 25, 1978, $10.2 million vanished from Security Pacific National Bank in Los Angeles. There was no alarm, no broken glass, no weapon. The bank didn't even notice. The largest bank robbery in American history at that time was not committed with a gun or a mask. It was committed with a memorized code and a phone call. The thief was a computer consultant named Stanley Rifkin. And in the end, it wasn't the FBI's detective work or the bank's security that caught him. It was Stanley Rifkin's own mouth. He simply could not stop talking about it. Stanley Mark Rifkin was, by all outward appearances, unremarkable. A slim man in his early 30s with large frame tinted glasses and the wardrobe of someone who had never once been noticed walking into a room. He was a freelance computer consultant working in the greater Los Angeles area during the dawn of electronic banking. This was an era when the word computer still conjured images of room-sized machines humming behind locked doors. Rifkin had been hired by Security Pacific National Bank to work on a contingency plan for their wire transfer room. This was the nerve center where millions of dollars moved electronically every single day. His job gave him legitimate access to the room where all wire transfers were authorized. He was not a bank employee. He was an outsider, granted a temporary key to the kingdom, and he studied every lock in the building. What Rifkin understood, perhaps better than the bank itself, was that the security protecting tens of millions of dollars in daily transfers was not a vault or an armed guard. It was a daily code, a verbal authorization over the phone, and institutional trust. In that wire transfer room, the daily security code was reportedly posted in plain sight, on a wall-mounted slip of paper visible to anyone who walked in. For a man with Rifkin's access, it was like leaving the combination to the safe taped to the safe. On the afternoon of October 25, 1978, Rifkin reportedly visited the wire transfer room during a legitimate work visit. He memorized the daily security code. Then he left. That was step one. Step two was a phone call. Rifkin called the wire transfer room, posing as a bank employee, and used the memorized code to authorize a transfer of $10.2 million. The operators processed it without hesitation. The money was wired to Irving Trust Company in New York. From there, it was credited to Waschaud Handelsbank in Zurich, Switzerland. In a matter of minutes, the funds had crossed an ocean. The wire transfer appeared entirely routine. It was processed normally through the Federal Reserve System. No flag was raised. No alarm was triggered. The bank had no idea it had just been robbed. But Rifkin wasn't finished. He traveled to Geneva, Switzerland, where he used the stolen funds to purchase approximately 115,000 carats of diamonds from Ruselmaz, a Soviet government diamond trading agency. He had converted invisible electronic money into something he could hold in his hands. Then he smuggled the diamonds back into the United States. A computer consultant from Los Angeles had just pulled off the most audacious bank robbery in American history. Consider what he did not use. No gun, no mask, no getaway car, no computer hack. His only tools were social engineering, a memorized code, and the unwavering confidence of a man pretending to belong. It was, at that moment, the largest bank robbery in United States history. And the victim, a bank that moved billions in electronic transfers, had been defeated by the most basic vulnerability of all: human trust. Here is the part of this story that should have been the hardest for investigators. The bank did not detect the theft through its own systems. The wire transfer looked completely legitimate. As far as Security Pacific was concerned, nothing had happened. So how was Stanley Rifkin caught? He told people. He reportedly bragged about what he had done. A man who had committed the perfect crime apparently could not resist the urge to make sure everyone knew it. Rifkin confided in his attorney and at least one associate about the theft. According to reports, one of these individuals contacted the FBI. The greatest bank robbery in American history was solved by a tip from someone the thief trusted. FBI agents began tracing the wire transfer. $10.2 million routed from Los Angeles to New York to Zurich. The electronic trail was clean, but now they had a name. And a name was all they needed. Investigators confirmed that Rifkin had purchased a massive quantity of diamonds in Geneva from a Soviet government trading agency. He had essentially laundered electronic funds into untraceable physical gems, or so he thought. The FBI confirmed that Rifkin had smuggled the diamonds back into the United States. The scope of the crime was now clear. A consultant had exploited his own client's trust and walked away with a fortune in gems. Approximately 12 days after the theft, the FBI had enough. They knew who he was, what he had taken, and where the money had gone. On November 6, 1978, they moved in. FBI agents arrested Stanley Rifkin on November 6, 1978. The man who had stolen $10.2 million without raising a single alarm was taken into custody without incident. Authorities recovered some of the diamonds Rifkin had purchased in Geneva. The physical evidence of his international shopping spree was now in FBI hands, glittering proof of one of the most unusual bank robberies ever committed. Rifkin was released on $200,000 bail. For most people, an arrest for the largest bank robbery in U.S. history might inspire a period of quiet reflection. Stanley Rifkin was not most people. While out on bail, awaiting trial for one of the most brazen financial crimes in history, Rifkin attempted a second wire transfer fraud, this time targeting Union Bank of Los Angeles. The audacity is almost admirable. Almost. He used a similar wire transfer scheme, the same playbook, the same social engineering techniques, as if the first arrest had been not a warning but a dress rehearsal. This second attempt led to additional charges. Whatever sympathy the court might have entertained for a clever first-time offender evaporated. Rifkin had proven he was not a man who learned from his mistakes. In March 1979, Stanley Rifkin pleaded guilty to 2 counts of wire fraud. There was no dramatic trial, no jury deliberation. He simply admitted what he had done twice. The first count covered the original theft from Security Pacific National Bank, the $10.2 million wire transfer that had crossed continents before the bank even noticed. The second count addressed his attempted fraud against Union Bank while on bail. The judge sentenced Rifkin to 8 years in federal prison for a crime that netted over $10 million and briefly made him one of the most successful bank robbers in American history. The sentence was sobering but definitive. The diamonds, his grand plan to convert electronic digits into portable, untraceable wealth, were partially recovered. Some reports suggest their value was significantly less than the $10.2 million he had paid. Even as a diamond buyer, Rifkin may have gotten a bad deal. Rifkin entered federal prison, a world of concrete, cinder block, and regimented routine. The man who had dined with Soviet diamond dealers in Geneva and outwitted one of America's largest banks now wore khaki and followed a schedule set by someone else. His guilty plea meant the case was resolved swiftly, but the story of Stanley Rifkin was far from over. What he had done would reshape how banks, businesses, and governments thought about security for decades to come. The Rifkin case became a landmark in the history of electronic funds transfer fraud. It demonstrated that the greatest vulnerability in any security system is not technology, it's people. Before Rifkin, banks believed their wire transfer systems were secure because they were internal and electronic. After Rifkin, the industry began to understand that social engineering, manipulating people rather than machines, was the real threat. His case is still taught in security courses, business schools, and law enforcement academies around the world. It is studied not for its sophistication, but for its simplicity. A reminder that the most dangerous hackers don't always need a computer. Banking security has changed dramatically since 1978. Multi-factor authentication, encrypted communications, and automated fraud detection have replaced the handwritten codes and verbal authorizations that Rifkin exploited. His crime would be far more difficult today. Stanley Rifkin proved that you don't need a weapon to rob a bank. You need confidence, knowledge, and the willingness to exploit trust. He also proved something else. If you pull off the perfect crime, the hardest part isn't the heist. It's keeping your mouth shut. Stanley Rifkin stole $10.2 million with nothing but a memorized code and a phone call. He was caught because he told someone. The most sophisticated part of the crime was the theft. The most human part was the need to be admired for it. A new case drops every day. Subscribe so you never miss one.